This video is going to be on a review for determining the distance between 2 points on the coordinate plane. Alright, so a couple of things that we need to think about. The first thing we always need to keep in mind is determining whether or not we have a horizontal or a vertical line. So if the y values for each of the two ordered pairs is the same, then that means the line formed when you connect the 2 points will be a horizontal line. So looking at our ordered pair, -9 and 6, and 4 and 6, we notice that 6 and 6 are the same. That means my y values are the same. And notice this is a horizontal line. Okay? If the x values for each ordered pair are the same, then the line formed by connecting the 2 points will be vertical. So notice we have 4, 5, and 4, -8. So 4, 5, and 4, -8. My 4, which is my x values, are the same, and notice that the line formed is a vertical line. Alright, next thing we want to think about is determining if a line, whether it be horizontal or vertical, spans across 2 quadrants. In other words, it's going to pass over my 0 value for the x or my 0 value for the y, or if the line is contained within just 1 quadrant, okay? Because determining the distance between those 2 points, the method for determining the distance will be different if it spans across 2 quadrants or if it's contained in just 1 quadrant. Alright, so let's look at our first example. Our first example is determining the distance between -2 and 2 and +2, +2. Okay? So we can look at the graph and see that if we connect these 2 points, it's going to be horizontal, which means the y values are the same. And looking at our y values, they're both +2. Okay? The next thing is determining the distance. Okay? So when I have them graphed, I can count the distance. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So the distance between these 2 points is 4. Notice that I have a -2 and a 2. Okay? Because one x value was negative, the other x value was positive, that puts them in 2 different quadrants. So notice the absolute value for +2 is 2, and the absolute value for -2 is 2, and so 2 + 2 is 4. So that's another method that we can keep in mind. Alright, our next example, notice now our 2 points are in the same quadrant. They're both in quadrant 4. We have +1, -1, and +1, -3. Okay? Notice that the line formed is a vertical line, which means that our x values are the same. Okay? Now if I want to determine my distance, I can either count. I go 1, 2, so the distance between these 2 points is 2. Okay? Notice I have a -1 and a -3. Because both of these numbers were negative, it tells me they're in the same quadrant, okay? Which means I can look at the number 3 and 1 and find the difference between those 2 numbers. 3 minus 1 is 2. The distance is 2. Alright, we have 2 different lines on this table, and both of these are in quadrant 1, okay? I'm using these dark bold lines, if you notice, to represent my 0x and my 0y axis. Okay, so this is quadrant 1. My first data point is 1, 7, 7, 7. My 7s here in the y places are the same. That makes it a horizontal line. And then I have 4, 0, and 4, 6. My x values are the same, which makes this a vertical line. Okay? So determining the distance, again, I can just count. So to go from 1, 7 to 7, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this is a 6. Okay? Again, if I look at my 2 numbers that are different, 7 and 1, because they're both positive, that tells me they're in the same quadrant. then I can find the difference. 7 minus 1 is 6. All right, looking at my vertical, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the distance here is 6. Notice I have a 0 and a 6. They're both positive numbers. So I have the difference between 6 and 0 is 6. All right, our next example. Now we have a line that is vertical that crosses over our 0 y value axis, that x-axis. Notice that my x values are the same. They're both 2. That tells me that it's a vertical line. And notice that it crosses over that 0 axis. And so that means I can use my absolute value. So let me count first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My distance here is 8. But notice, remember, the two numbers I'm concerning myself with is the 2, which was a y value, and negative 6, which was a y value. My absolute value for 2 is 2. My absolute value for negative 6 is 6. 2 plus 6 is 8. My distance is 8. All right, our last example. This line is contained within quadrant 3. Quadrant 3. So both x's are negative and both y's are negative in quadrant 3. I have a data point, negative 8, negative 2, and negative 1, negative 2. Since both my y values are the same, negative 2, that tells me that it's going to be a horizontal line, and we see a horizontal line. Then we want to determine the distance between the 2 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The distance is 7. Notice, because my x values are both negative, that tells me they're in the same quadrant. They do not cross over a 0 axis. And so I can look at the difference between 8 and 1, and that gives me 7. Okay? So we can use a graph and look at and count the spaces like we did here, or we can look at just the data points, keeping the things in mind that we have been told to think about our lines and our same x value or our same y value, determining whether or not it crosses over that 0 axis. All right, so here are some points for you to think about. 2, 2, and 2, 4. And let's look at thinking about negative 4, 5, and 2, 5. So pausing the video to give yourself some time to think about these distances, and I will put up the answer. Okay. So if you looked at the numbers, you saw that your x values were the same. These were both positive, so you found the difference. Your y values were the same. One was positive, one was negative, so you added. This has been a review of determining distance of 2 points on the coordinate plane.